Wesley Morgan coming to you tonight here on March 22nd of for some reason it's backed it up tonight. Unbelievable. We tested every single aspect of this before, walked through the entire thing before we went live to make sure that nothing happened. But we'll see how this works out. Tonight we want to. This is Wesley Morgan. I'm running for United States Senate against Mitch McConnell for the Republican nomination. As I don't know if y'all have heard or not, but the primary election has been moved from May the 19th, 2020. To June the 23rd, 2020. So with everything going on in the world right now, with everything being shut down, in fact, our governor just issued an order that all non-essential businesses shall close as of tomorrow at 8 p.m. I don't know necessarily what he considers to be non-essential, but I'm sure we'll find out tomorrow. But I guess there's a lot of people at home because there's really nothing else to do. All the restaurants are closed, and all the bars and so forth. So you got there's no NCAA tournament. Every meeting that we had, every speaking engagement that we had is all been shut down. So we really just everyone's out in limbo, and we really don't know what's going on. But we have a great program tonight, assuming that our internet and our computer will work long enough to broadcast this show. I think that you all will enjoy it. So we have a great guest that's going to come here tonight. We tried to get him in last Sunday, and we were having all kinds of issues with the internet and everything else. But like I said, we tested everything, and everything worked perfectly up until I just tried to do the introduction, and the introduction would not work. But right now, I'm going to tell you that this program is going to be dedicated to the Convention of States. I know there are some people, and I used to be one of them, that was really, really worried about the Convention of States. I was for an Article 5 convention, and all the Article 5 convention does is just bypass the Congress and go straight to the states in order to make a constitutional amendment. And based upon, a Congress with a 17% approval rating, I'm not sure that's a bad thing to bypass Congress and go straight to the state legislatures and pass some constitutional amendments that would really put Congress in its place in Washington, because they're running absolutely rampant and running on top of the people. And for example, let's just look at where they dumped all their stock before they let it out about the coronavirus. That's basically just stealing from the poor old people who try to buy stocks and bonds and stuff in order to have a decent retirement when they get done. And we have these people who are just dealing in millions of dollars worth of this stock, and then they have inside information so they don't lose. And they force it off of a poor old teacher or somebody like that that's worked and tried to pay in on these retirement plans, and then these people get their money and we get the shaft. But anyway, let's talk about let's go to Convention of States, and I'm bringing up an overlay here to show you the Convention of States. That's their logo, and this is the thing that we're going to be talking about tonight. So we'll move on to. I want to tell you a little bit about what the Convention of States, what they're trying to accomplish, and our guest is going to tell us more about it. But according to what they're standing for right now, they have a three-part convention and state platform. They want to impose fiscal restraints on the federal government. They want to limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and they want to limit the term of office for federal officials. Now, I'm for every one of those, and I believe those are really admirable things to do, and we need them done. And again, I'll go to you and I'll tell you that We've tried it with Congress, and Congress is not going to pass anything that puts any limit upon. You cannot get someone to vote against their own interest. And that's basically what Congress would have to do in order to vote in term limits. That's what they would have to do to put in physical restraints, because they want to spend your money any way they want to spend your money. And that's exactly what's going on. And then we want to limit the jurisdiction of the federal government. Article 10 of Amendment 10 of the Constitution of the Bill of Rights says that Congress shall make no law that is not enumerated in the Constitution, and all the other rights are reserved for the states and for the people. But they're violating that. Then we'll move on and we'll look at exactly what is an Article 5, and I'll look at the Article 5 of the Constitution. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution, then ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states. So it takes 2/3 of the states to call the Constitutional Convention, and it takes 3/4 of them to pass anything that is proposed as a constitutional amendment. So it's a difficult process no matter what, but an Article 5 convention is going to bypass the Constitution, the Congress, and go directly to the states. So that is basically what Article 5 is. You can look it up. Just go in and Google Article 5 of the Constitution of the United States, and you can look at it for yourself. Now, we're not the only people that have been for this. We have some really prominent people who have actually endorsed the Convention of States. And one of them was Judge Anton Scalia. And, it was a horrible thing when we lost Judge Scalia, because he was a constitutional-minded person. But I'm going to let you hear Judge Scalia in his own words, and then we'll be back in just a second.
I listed first among my the things I would like to have considered structural issues at the federal level. I don't have a lack of trust in the American people. I mean, I'm the one up here who's least terrified of a convention. Yeah, we've come a long way. We've gotten over a lot of problems, but the fact remains that there is a widespread, deep feeling of powerlessness in the country. One sees it on every side with respect to many issues, not just the budget issues. The people do not feel that their wishes are observed. They're heard, but they're not observed, particularly at the federal level. Now, the Congress has come up with a lot of palliatives for this problem, among which I was on a panel a few days ago discussing the legislative veto, for example, which to my mind doesn't solve the problem at all. The basic problem is simply that the Congress has become professionalized. It has an interest much higher than ever existed before in remaining in office. It has a bureaucracy that is serving it. It is much more subject to the power of individualized pressure groups as opposed to the unorganized feelings of the majority of the citizens. All of these reasons have created this feeling, which is real and which I think has a proper basis, of powerlessness. One remedy for that, the ones specifically provided in the Constitution, is this amendment process which bypasses the Congress. I would like to see that amendment process used just once at first. I don't much care what it's used for the first time. I think just having it used once will exert an enormous influence upon both the Congress and the Supreme Court, I think. I think we'll get the parameters established of how you do it, what can be done, and I think after that the Congress and the court will behave much better. Sure, I wouldn't want a convention for some silly purpose, of course not. But I think there are a lot of serious purposes around, a lot of matters that profoundly concern the American people and as to which they can't have any voice. I really want to see the process used responsibly on a serious issue, so that the shibboleth, the Richard Rovere nonsense about the end of the world is coming, can be put to rest, and we can learn how to use the process responsibly in the future.
Okay, that's former Chief Justice, who's now deceased, obviously, former Justice of the Supreme Court, Anton Scalia, and you heard it out of his own mouth. He thinks it should be used because it would send an enormous amount of pressure to Congress. I believe the same thing. Now, again, I'm Wesley Morgan. I'm running for United States Senate against Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell has been your United States Senator for 36 years. Now, there is not a thing in Washington, D.C. that has happened in the last 36 years that Mitch McConnell has not had a part in. So keep that in mind. We are running against him in the Republican primary, June 23rd, 2019. And we hope that you will watch our programs and go to morganforsenate2020.com and you decide that who you should vote for. But I believe if you will just do a little bit of research on us, that you will find that we more than meet the bill for a good constitutionalist that wants to go up and protect the Constitution and protect the people's rights. So now I want to introduce you to my guest. My guest is Grant Martin. He is the regional director for the Convention of States, and we'd like to bring him on now. And Grant, if you will come on, I will. Are you there, sir?
I'm here. How about you there, Wesley? You hear me good?
Okay, yeah, I will bring you up with us.
Awesome. It's a pleasure to be here with you, sir, and with your audience. I really appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you very much for, getting on StreamYard. And where are you at right at this moment, Grant?
I am in Florida. I'm in northwest panhandle of Florida here, over in L.A., Lower Alabama, as they might call it.
All right. Well, if you just want to kind of just, I guess you heard my introduction. Can you just kind of take off and you work in this and trying to get a Convention of States every day?
I do. This is a full-time job for me. I am one of approximately 40 people that are paid, but we have 4.1 million supporters and volunteers throughout the nation. So we're blessed. I started out as a volunteer for the first 2 years, but Convention of States, a lot of people ask me what it is, and I always used to kind of oversimplify it and just say that it's the constitutional means to put the federal government back into its constitutional box. I mean, I think we all agree that the federal government is out of control, but our message is a little bit bigger than that. It's really about hope. And the whole thing is we, and I think Antonin Scalia said it so well, that we as people, we feel hopeless against what's going on in our federal government. And, it's funny how many people have never heard of this solution before. In fact, I was one of them until about, I guess 5 years ago. I'd never even heard of it. Here I was, I'm former Air Force, and I raised my right hand to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I didn't even know that this solution existed. I mean, what truly visionaries that the founding fathers were to give us this hope that they knew not only would this day come, that our federal government wouldn't necessarily assume too much control, too much power, and be in too much of our lives, but they gave us a solution to do something about it. So really, I mean, it's really simple. I mean, we'll get into a lot more details, but it's really, as you said, it takes 2/3 of the states to agree on the subject, to call for the convention. So you mentioned the platform that our resolution has 3 subject areas, which are anything that imposes fiscal restraints on the federal government, term limits on federal officials and Congress, and then anything that reduces the scope and jurisdiction of the federal government. So once when I
was a state representative, you guys came to me and asked me to sponsor a resolution calling for the convention of states. And at the time, I turned you down. And the reason I turned you down is I was afraid of what they call a runaway convention.
Sure.
And you guys have pretty much, after speaking to Mark Meckler, your president, and doing a little research on my own, I found out that those were really unfounded concerns.
Sure.
That you know, it would be no different than with the state legislatures, 2/3 of them determining or calling the convention. I would actually trust them more than I would trust Congress of prayer and amendment. Would you not?
I couldn't agree with you more, Wesley. You know, I'm fortunate. I have 6 states that I work with, so I'm fortunate in the fact that I get a chance to travel and meet different state legislators, primarily the grassroots. I love being with the grassroots. I mean, we just have some amazing patriots in this organization, and yeah, but I've had the opportunity. I often hear that there's no Madisons, there's no Jeffersons, there's no George Washingtons, and I couldn't find that farther from the truth. Number one, you know, I'm out there in the field an awful lot with the grassroots. Obviously, not right now. I'm not doing much traveling right now, but I see them all the time. You know, but I also see them in the state legislators. Now, granted, not all of them are good people. You know, but they are. You know, it's not everybody thinks, you know, when they hear politician, they think of the federal government and Congress that's getting paid $220,000 a year. You know, these guys, as you know, Wesley, you're you know, $20,000-$30,000. I mean, you're truly a citizen servant. And
well, but really, in all honesty, though. Grant, the really problem is I don't have a problem as much about their salary as I have the problem of them exempting themselves from having to abide by the laws that they're putting upon us to do.
You think that's unconstitutional?
Oh my God! Well, of course, I think it is, but you know that would go against their interest to try to change it. But then for them to have not a Cadillac healthcare system for themselves, but a Rolls Royce system that you cannot get no better than what they have, and a Rolls Royce retirement system for them, while common people like you and I, Grant, just sit and suffer. We suffer with what the scraps that they throw on the floor for us to get, and I think that system's got to leave, and the only way that you can do that is through a convention of states and through calling an Article 5 convention, because we have to bypass them because, like I said previous, they're never going to change it, and you can understand why they're not. Who's going to take you know, the Rolls Royce systems away from yourself?
Well, you know, and George Mason, who was the one that was instrumental for getting this put into the Constitution 2 days before the Constitution was signed. You know, he said it best, and I'm going to paraphrase. The bottom line, do we think that the federal government became tyrannical, that they would ever impose any restrictions on themselves? And of course, the answer, you know, it's funny if you read Madison's notes during the debates of the Constitution, that is the only thing. When he brought this up, it is the only subject in those debates that was not debated. I mean, I could just picture them sitting around, and it was like the V8 aha moment. He's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that makes perfect sense." You know, they unanimously they voted to put it in, put the second clause of Article 5 in to allow the states, you know, the people working through their state legislators, to propose amendments.
Well, you know, when you know, I mean, let's just be truthful. You know, originally the senators were supposed to be elected by the state legislatures in order to represent. That's I believe what is that? The 17th Amendment of the Constitution when they repealed that. But originally the 2 senators were supposed to have been appointed by the legislatures in order to protect the states' rights. That's and right. Then the representative or the congressman that is apportioned by all by the population across the country, those people were supposed to represent the people. And the problem is that even though I have nothing against people being elected by directly from the people, we kind of lost the intent of what the Constitution, what they wanted it to be. And that's the reason why that we're losing our states' rights, and the reason why the federal government has become so big is because our senators really don't have the interest of their state, in mind. They have the interest of the country, and that's not what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to represent their state and what they could get for their state. And the federal government was sort of a second thought, to be quite honest with you, other than the states' rights. And then those congressmen people were supposed to look out for the best interests of the people at large. And as you know, both of those situations are totally broken, and they're not working at all. I would be for repealing the 17th Amendment also. But anyway, don't mean to interrupt you there, but I'm just trying to insert some things.
No, and it's that it just shows the wisdom of the founding fathers when they set up the system. Not only did they have the balance of powers within the federal government, but not only we the people were supposed to be a check on the government, the states were supposed to be a check on the government. So they knew what mankind was like. They knew that power ultimately corrupts, right? And so they tried to put as many roadblocks into that. So they that's unfortunately we lost a major one with the 17th Amendment, and I agree with you.
Let me go to a question here. Someone says, if you haven't signed our petition yet, what are you waiting for? Well, I have signed the petition. So I won't answer that directly to that person. They didn't put their name down, but I have signed the petition as a supporter of the Convention of States. Anyway, go ahead.
And we certainly appreciate that, Wesley. We certainly appreciate all the supporters across Kentucky. But anyways, we're just saying, the checks and balances that the founding fathers gave us, and this is one of the tools. I often think right now, if Madison or Washington were somehow to become come back to earth here for us, I think they'd probably be very disappointed in us. The fact that we haven't used their tool that they gave us to put the federal government back in check. So, I just think that it's the only solution. Our slogan is "Solution as big as the problem."
Now, I know that you guys are nonpartisan, that you don't support any particular candidate, which that's the wise thing to do. You don't support either any particular candidate or any particular party for that matter. Your interest is totally 100% for the Convention of States, and that's it.
That's correct.
And it doesn't matter what you're Democrat, Independent, or Republican. As long as they support the Convention of States, that's what you're for.
That's right. Well, it's not it's not a party issue. It's not I mean, if you polling across the nation shows that 75% of the people believe that the federal government is too big, and that's regardless of party affiliation or anything. And
doesn't that cause you a little bit of trouble though? Let me give you an example. People like my opponent, Mitch McConnell, that would be contrary to his interests to support the Convention of States. And I believe that is, and I'm making just an assumption here, but don't necessarily want you to take any position politically. But if it's against his interest, because he wouldn't want you to call a Convention of States and take away his right, what he considers to be his right as a senator, or the congressman. I would assume every congressman feels the same way, that they're used to a particular system and they don't want you upsetting the apple cart on them. Would you agree that a lot of your problems are from incumbents?
I would certainly, I would agree that there's the vast majority of Washington, D.C. politicians don't necessarily support this. I will say that there are some courageous ones out there that do. I certainly, we have the junior Senator Rand Paul in Kentucky has endorsed us. Certainly, Mitch McConnell has not.
Well, and Has there been any, what about any Kentucky Congress people? Have they endorsed you at all?
And don't quote me on this. I do not think that we have any Kentucky congressmen or women that have endorsed us in Kentucky.
Not even Thomas Massey? Thomas Massey hasn't done that?
I do not remember off the top of my head. I'd have to look up and get back to you. The only one that I'm positive of that has been Rand Paul.
Well, they're pretty close, so I'll bet that Thomas probably has. But anyway, continue on. But I'm sorry, but I'm going to keep injecting questions.
No. That's no. I want to answer your questions. So I think we're just saying that as far as the process, we have to get 2/3 of the states to agree to the topic. Then they have a convention. They're going to send commissioners with a commission that says what their limits are that they can talk about. Obviously through our resolution, it's already limited to that. But the states, I'm sure, are going to say that hey, we're only going to agree to terms of X, as far as when you're talking about term limits, type thing. So there will be some additional instructions that are given, further refinements that the states will give their commissioners. And you know what? It's just they fall under agency law. I mean, it's just, and this is what I don't understand about the big runaway myth that's out there. We have a real estate all the time where we're used to selling real estate, right? You have real estate agent that sells things for them. They fall under agency law. If they come to you and you set a price for your house that this will be the minimum that you'll accept, and they say, hey, I got some great news for you. I got a buyer. But they're only going to give you about $40,000 less than what you said that you'd sell for. You're not bound by that, right? So, anyways, they're going to go there. They're going to debate these amendments around these topics, and if you believe in federalism, I think that's the way to go. I mean, you get a group of people, and the state legislators, they're not going to send people that are that don't know what the heck they're doing. I mean, most of them probably will be former state legislators or sitting state legislators. They're going to understand the rules. They're going to understand Robert's Rules of Order. And so they're going to debate. They're going to have a debate. Hopefully they're going to come out with some amendments. I mean, my bigger fear than anything is that, they won't be able to agree on a particular amendment. I have about zero fear of the runaway. I'm just more concerned that they agree on and give us some good amendments to work with. So those amendments come out. Congress will send it down to the states for it to be ratified. And each one of those amendments has to be amended by 3/4 of the states. I mean, this is a very, very high bar. There's a reason why they've been using the Supreme Court to unofficially amend the Constitution.
That's
It's much easier to go that route than it is to do what we're doing.
And that's another reason why I believe we need the Convention of States, is because somebody's got to rein in the courts. The judicial system has been making law since 1940. Maybe even a little farther back than that, but since 1940, it's been really bad. And they just make law at their whim, and that was never intended. The only thing they were supposed to do is say something was not constitutional. If Congress passed a law, and even if it's signed in by the president, then they could say it wasn't constitutional. But I don't know when it ever came to the situation where they could say, well, that isn't, but this is. So you can't do that, but you can do this. Well, you can't do that unless Congress passed it. So,
all you have to do is look at the Commerce Clause, what they've done to the Commerce Clause. I mean, that's how we have the alphabet soup that we do of regulatory agencies, is what Supreme Court has done with the Commerce Clause. So the only way to really fix that is I've heard other proposed solutions is, one, elect better people. Well, first thing I want to say is on on the bright side of that is I agree. We should always be trying to elect the best people possible. We should be vetting them properly, and that's a critically important part of the thing. But on this, go
Let
ahead.
me interject in there in
Sure.
that particular place. I don't know if you know this or not, but in September of 2014, Mitch McConnell slipped into the spending bill a change in the campaign finance laws. Up until that point, you could contribute $32,400 to a political party or a committee of the party. Well, he slipped a change into those campaign contribution laws that changed that from $32,400 to $324,000. Now, what that means is only to a party or to a committee of a party, for example, the Republican Senatorial Reelection Fund, that money gets to be used to reelect incumbents. But a challenger does not have access to that money. Now, what alerted me to that is when you said elect better people. Well, how can you elect better people if Grant Martin can give Mitch McConnell $324,000 to get reelected, but you can only give me $2,800 to challenge him? I mean, it just makes no sense. The system is rigged. It's rigged towards the incumbent who is setting up there living the life of the elite. And as we said, with Rolls Royce benefits and pay, and not paying any attention to the people because they have it so rigged that you really can't get, the people can't get a fair shake because it's rigged against them. And so I will agree with you that just saying to elect better people, there's a whole lot bigger mouthful than just saying elect better people, because when it's rigged in their favor to the point of $324,000 by donor compared to $2,800 by donor for the challenger, that's too much rigging. Anyway.
Well, there is a reason why there's 94%, 94, 95% reelection rate. I forget what the percentage is, but it's something right around there. So there, it is obviously. So the second part of that, what I would say is, what I always tell people when they give me that as one of the solutions, kind of on the smart aleck side, I'll say, well, how's that working for you? So, obviously, so that's one of the other solutions that I hear. I've also heard, nullification as a solution. Well, there's two types of nullifications. One, the states can say, we're not going to accept your money and we're not going to implement that program, right? And I encourage states to do that, but most states are not willing to turn down federal money, unfortunately. And then if they do, they get that used against them in their reelection too. So,
well, I mean, let's look at realism on that. If Kentucky turns down $1 billion, you think New York ain't going to say, "Hey, I'll take it"?
Sure.
And so they can use that $1 billion in New York, and the people of Kentucky would suffer from that. How many states do you have already that has actually passed a resolution to call a conventional state?
We have 15 states that have passed so far our resolution. And it's important for people to realize, too, there's a couple different Article 5 movements out there. There's a group that's called the Balanced Budget Amendment. There's a group that's called Term Limits. And then there's a wolf pack. And then there's us. So we have all the other ones are just a single topic resolution. Ours is the only one that has the 3-prong resolution, and that's why we just think that the problem's bigger. You take a balanced budget amendment, what keeps them from raising your taxes to balance the budget? So that's term limits, all for that. Is that going to be big enough to solve the problem? Don't think so. That's why we think that the thing to do is look at it as a package, and that's why our slogan is a solution as big as the problem.
Well, I think we all know that it's never going to change until we do something else. But let me bring up another argument that I've heard against convention of states, and that is, and I mentioned briefly just a moment ago about a runaway excuse me, a runaway convention, but the fear of losing the Second Amendment. How you address that?
Oh, that's easy. There's nothing in messing with the Second Amendment that reduces the power of the federal government. It's certainly not germane to the topic of our Article 5 convention call. If you don't believe me, ask Charles Cooper, who has litigated before the Supreme Court before the NRA. He's on our board. He's certainly endorses the process. He's certainly a guy of integrity and certainly of greater knowledge than I. And there's no way he'd be helping us if he thought anything that was in jeopardy of the Second Amendment. Another thing that I will add is most states include in their resolution and some of the topics that nothing can be addressed. Nothing can address the Bill of Rights.
That's good. That's really good. Especially Bill of Rights that's not been enforced anyway. I mean,
sure.
Look at what McConnell has done. He and his cohorts in Congress, they practically gutted the Fourth Amendment with the Patriot Act. I mean, when you can be detained without trial for an indefinite period of time, or you can have your property seized or your privacy invaded without court. I mean, completely contrary to the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, which says that you should be secure in your paper and your places of residence and so forth, unless someone goes and swears out a warrant and gives specific information as to where that evidence is located if they're coming in to take some of your search your property or whatever. So that's about gone. They've done everything they can do to try to chisel away at the Second Amendment by passing one law after another, trying to cut a little bit of it off here and there, and they've done that to practically everything. Even look at the First Amendment. The process of they don't supposed to make a law concerning religion, but they don't follow up what it says right after that. It says they shall not do anything to prohibit the free exercise thereof. And look what they're doing. If you're not prohibiting the free exercise thereof, then how do you force someone to take the Ten Commandments down off the state building? It's ridiculous. And so they're violating the Bill of Rights every day.
Sure.
And you guys are probably the only hope we got.
Well, I tell you what, I mentioned that this really is a message of hope, and I've been so blessed since I've been in this organization. Number one, I've got a chance to meet so many grassroots, just wonderful patriots across the nation, people that support this, people that are so passionate about it, spend their time, as volunteers, spending their time, their money. I mean, I have people that have probably traveled 40,000 miles in their car in a year alone, just meeting different people, talking to people about this. Just some of the most amazing, salt of the earth people that just love this great nation. So you see that it brings you an awful lot of hope.
When I'm campaigning across the state, I see the same thing. And in fact, the most, in my opinion, the people I've seen that is most aware of what's going on and how our rights are being eroded are people who have come out for Convention of States. We have a lot of supporters among people who belong to Convention of States. I'm not talking about them as a member of your organization, the organization supporting me, but them individually supporting my candidacy. And there may be some supporting other, McConnell, I don't know. I didn't ask them. But if you find one, let me know, because I want to ask him how he put that together. But anyway,
Well,
but
but you mentioned that though. I mean, that's the thing is, I'm seeing such an awakening of people in this great nation that understand that things aren't right, and they're hearing about the solution. And myself, it took me a year. I come into the organization where I found out about the organization because my wife had sent me a Facebook post. And I know myself well enough that if I dive into something, I'm going to dive into it all the way. So I was reading about it, and then I had to go over to Israel. I was over there for 8 months, and I come back, and my second granddaughter was born a week after I left to go to Israel. And what was the final thing for me was when I come back and got situated, and I'm looking at my two granddaughters. I'm looking at them in the eyes, and I'm thinking, what am I turning over to them? How irresponsible is it of me to sit here and just complain and bellyache and do nothing about it, and then turn over $22 trillion worth of debt, turn over a country that we're slowly losing liberty. So for me, I had to do something, and I've been studying this. I don't take anything that we do lightly. And to me, this is the only solution that I see, and that's why I'm pushing so hard for it.
well, I'd have to agree with you that based upon everything that I have witnessed here in the last few years, I believe that that Convention of States is the only possibility of hope that we have. I don't believe it's going to be fixed. There's no way it's going to be fixed.
You're spot on when you say that they're not going to do anything to fix themselves. I mean, it's only most people in our country don't realize. One of the other arguments I hear a lot is, well, they don't follow the Constitution now. Why would they follow the amendment? And then my response to them, which Constitution are you talking about? It's because most people, when you say the Constitution, you think of the little pocket guide that we carry around with us. That's not the Constitution that we're following. All you have to do is go to the Congress website, or just go with your Google, whatever browser you use, type in annotated Constitution, and you're going to wind up on a congressional website. And the Constitution there is about 3,000 pages. It's just shy of 3,000 pages. And you know what that is? They call it the annotated Constitution. It's the Constitution as interpreted by the federal or by the Supreme Court. So, the Constitution that you and I love is not the Constitution that we're following. So what we're fighting for is to take that 2,700 page behemoth back down to as close to that pocket-sized Constitution that we're so revere.
Well, it's just like our president, and I'm a strong supporter of our president. But to be honest with you, if we don't do some kind of constitutional reset while we have a person in there that is fully aware of the problems that's facing our country, then once he goes out of office, there's nothing to say that he won't go right back to where it was at. We have to have a constitutional reset.
Our foundation has been chipped at. Yeah.
Pardon me?
Our foundation has been chipped away at. Is what we have a structural problem. They have taken our Constitution and have basically eviscerated it. And what Trump is doing is, it's mostly through executive orders, because that's all he can do for support. And you're right. The minute that he leaves office, if the next president doesn't feel the same way, all they have to do is just issue an executive order to overturn everything, just about everything that's been done.
Another problem we've been having in our campaign, Grant, is we had our United States Senator, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. He slipped into the 2017 National Defense Authorization Act. Now, when I say slipped, I mean slipped into the National Defense Authorization Act in December of 2016. House Bill 5181, a bill that was co-sponsored by Ted Lieu, one of the biggest liberal Democrats out of California. That 5181 that McConnell slipped into that National Defense Authorization Act created a $160 million slush fund to be used by the Broadcasting Board of Governors to censor conservative content in social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Very few people know about that. And when all this stuff that they do to us to undermine our constitutional rights are always slipped into some other bill so that we can't see it. And that's what they do so nobody complains. Now, I'm sitting here right now talking to you, and we're being basically blocked in our messenger. We're having names is not even coming up. Very few questions are being provided. I don't know how we get there. And all this was caused by that bill that McConnell slipped in. That how could he be a patriot? I mean, how if you're undermining the Constitution, and then we have people that swear by him, and but they don't know. They don't know what he's done. And then let me give you another good one. In 2012, he, as Senate Minority Leader, and Harry Reid, as Senate Majority Leader, slipped into the 2013 National Defense Authorization Act a repeal of the Smith-Mont Act. Have you ever heard of the Smith-Mont Act?
I have not, sir.
The Smith-Mont Act was passed in 1940, and it prohibited government propaganda from being used in the American news media. They repealed that law. That's where our fake news come from. That's the reason why they can get by with it. The reason why the Federal Communications Commission can't do anything about it, because McConnell and Harry Reid repealed the law that prohibited it. So if you skew the news media to where the government can lie to the people legally and can block the content in social media, so you and I can't exchange ideals if it's contrary to Big Brother, then we may be already gone unless we get constitutional. The Convention of States may be the only thing left that's going to straighten this place out.
I personally think it's the only thing that is that has enough oomph to actually make a difference. It's a peaceful constitutional means for us.
How's your structure? How is that structured around the country?
Well, we have a national team, which I'm considered part of. There's about 40 of us. Of course, you met our president, Mark Meckler, before, but we rely on the state teams. So we have our state teams are all volunteers. We typically have a state director and then a series of state level positions. And the most important position that we have is a district captain, and we're organized by house districts, state house districts. And that district captain is responsible for organizing that district, being a leader in that district, working with their state legislator, both their senator and their representative or delegate, depending on what state you're in, and working with them so the way they are educated on the Article 5 process, educated on our resolution. They also bring the grassroots. They train and teach the grassroots to be activists. So, our platform is all about activism. It takes the volunteers to make this happen, to get the resolutions passed in the states, and that's why we're so blessed to have some of the amazing patriots. And so we, as part of that hope, we give people an avenue to affect change. And so if you think that the federal government is too big and too much of your stuff, and you think that the federal government is just out of control, we can give you that avenue to work to change that. And we need volunteers. We need each and every one of them.
Are you guys just, are you financed by all donations or do you
We
have, I guess you probably have some wealthy people that really step in there and help you. Doesn't,
we've I'm not in the books. It's we have about 80,000 volunteers. I think our average donation is about $25. I do know that there's a couple people that, or I mean, there's some people that, like when we do polling projects around the states, there's a donor that that might be a project that they want to fund, to have us do polling to see how it stands within in the states. So but an average donation, I believe the number that I heard is $25. So it's mostly, and you hear these different stories at different times of these wonderful donors that are just writing letters. This is all I can do to help, but we fully support you, and it's maybe $5 or $10. Well, you know what, we are, we don't have any corporate offices. I work from my house. All the national staff works from their house. you know we we are very frugal with the money that the donors give us, because we understand where that comes from. And it's we're blessed to have them, some great donors, great patriots. But they're just they're people out there. They're wanting to affect change, and they expect us
yeah,
to be good stewards.
your donations, do they tend to get greater or about the same each year, or uh, just depends on your fundraising efforts?
Yeah, I mean, we have a department that does, boy, and they're Patty Meckler is the head of our what they call a development department, and they work hard. They really do work hard, and they also, but they also believe in giving their donors service. And one of the things I think that is really unique about our organization is, and you hear it in our national calls, Patty's always asking, what can I tell my donors? What can I give my donors? What can I tell them that we've done? What impacts have we made in the states that, that particular state? And so it's really, our organization really does believe in what we call servant leadership. And I think it's something else that sets us apart.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, I met Mark Meckler. He's a great guy and real down to earth, and he's easy to talk to. And his, his main concern, just like yours, is to see that to do as much as he can to try to make sure that this convention of states is called, so that and I agree with what former Justice Scalia said in that video. Just run something through there. Get something. Do the process. Get the process going. Uh,
Well,
it
you
might be
know,
better, though, to be quite honest with you, it might be better now than it would have been previous, because the more like-minded judges that we have um, makes the process a little bit more attainable than these liberals that's just going to try to throw the thing out for being unconstitutional for some reason that they just come up with.
well, the good news is, and a lot of people don't realize, there's actually been, I think, somewhere about 40, 45 cases, uh, some at the Supreme Court level, some at the district court level, that have actually rolled. So a lot of times we hear that we don't know what's going to happen. That's one of the common arguments. A lot of this stuff has already been determined. There's already been precedents set by the courts on this stuff. So that's why we are. Another thing that most people don't realize is, they'll say, well, why is there not much definition in the Constitution about the process, right? Well, there's two reasons for that. Number one, um, they were used to I mean, that's how they did business. That's how they did business. They had interstate gatherings all the time. Whereas in our nation, there's been like 46, 45, 46 interstate conventions. Now, they weren't Article 5 conventions, and about 30 of them were before the Constitution was ratified, and then there's been about 16 since then. But this is not. It's not like there's no knowledge on this. I mean, all those conventions have always been one state, one vote. They elect their president of the convention. None of them have run off the rails. And then you throw in the fact that there's also been several rulings that impact Article 5 throughout this, throughout the history there. So there is precedent. It's not like this is some sort of voodoo black magic that we know nothing about.
Well, I could say is, thank God for our founding fathers that put that provision in there, because even though you guys, I know you had a lot of pushback at 15. What does that mean? You need you need 34, right, to call it convention.
Right.
So we absolutely got, what is that, 19 to go?
19 to go. Yep.
And of course, it's too bad it isn't just put on the ballot or something, because these lifelong politicians are certainly going to be against it. So it's amazing that you've got 15 so far, I guess. But have you had any passed and then rescinded?
No, we have not had any rescissions, and primarily because we maintain the grassroots. It's our ultimate mission is to build the largest army of self-governing activists in the nation, and so we, obviously getting our resolution passed is a major milestone for us, right, in any state. But that's really just the beginning, because now we got to make sure that that the state legislators are sending good commissioners. When we get to that time, we have to make sure that we're fighting for ratification. And bottom line is we're really talking about bringing power back to the people, right? We want to take the power from the federal government and we want to return it to the people. Well, if we're going to do that, we have to be good stewards. We have to be engaged in the fight. And so that's why our mission is bigger. Our vision is bigger than Article 5, but it's about restoring self-governance, getting people to be involved with their government.
Well, I'll make a closing statement here, and then I'm going to ask you we got about a minute to go, and I ask you to make a closing statement. Again, I am Wesley Morgan, and I am running for United States Senate against Mitch McConnell, who opposes the Convention of States. I have signed the petition that I'm for the Convention of States, and I want to reach out to all those people who are members of the Convention of States to join our team and help us win. I will do everything I can to bring about the Convention of States if I'm given the opportunity to serve as your United States Senator. And I just didn't invent that. Like I told you, when I was a state representative, you came to me, and I was afraid to sponsor the resolution because I was convinced that, or had been convinced by someone, that there was a possibility of a runaway convention that would lose our Second Amendment rights. And then I realized that's just fear that's being used by the incumbents to really prevent from the calling of the Convention of States, an Article 5 convention. So my door is open to every person that is a member of the Convention of States. If they want to, not representing the Convention of States, I realize that, but representing me or you as a voter or your district or your county or whatever, come on board and help us win. And we hope, especially for I'm 69 years old and I don't have a long time to go, and I'm an automatic term limit, believe it or not, automatic. So if I win, you can't get no more than maybe 2 terms out of me. No matter how hard you try, unless the Lord steps in. That's all right if He wants to do that. But anyway, we'd love to have you. Morgan for Senate 2020.com. We also, like every campaign, I hate asking for money, but we sure appreciate a donation if you could see yourself to do that. You don't have to be everything you have. Anything helps, and we would appreciate that. So, Grant, if you would just give us a closing statement, we'll go from there.
Most certainly. Well, first off, Wesley, I want to really thank you and your audience for this wonderful opportunity to come speak with you and hopefully answer a few questions. I would encourage anybody that has any questions about Convention of States, go to www.conventionofstates.com. We have got a ton of information there. But more importantly, what I need you to do is when you go to that website, click the Take Action page. You can see all the volunteer opportunities that there are. We need you. We need people in this fight. People need to be engaged. And I want to close with one thing why I think this is so important. One story. I talked to a lady who wanted to be a district captain in Florida. This is when I was on the Florida team. She said something to me that I will never forget, Wesley, and it still sends chills down my spine. She was a Cuban immigrant. She came when she was 5. And of course, her and her family fled the regime change. She said something to me that just really to this day just haunts me. She said, Grant, I've lost one country. I can't lose a second one. And I want that to sink in. That's if we as people don't engage, we stand a chance of losing our country. So I beg you, engage. And with that, Wesley, I certainly wish you the best of luck in your campaign. Again, I thank you, sir, for your time, and let me talk to your audience.
Well, thank you very much for coming on here. I do want to extend an apology to Sam Welch. Sam asked me early in the week to provide him with a access to this program, and I sent him the access point, and I sent him the wrong one. And I didn't realize that till later today. And I got him the correct one to him today, but it left him in a really hard bind. He had a week to contact everyone and give them the information how to come on and listen to this program tonight. And Sam is a great guy, a good volunteer, and
he's one of those true patriots that I talk about there, Wesley.
Yeah, and Dick Cole over in Breckenridge County, he's a great one too. So we have a lot of people in your organization that I just cannot speak highly enough. So with that being said, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and hopefully we'll have the opportunity to come together again. Even with you guys being nonpartisan, keep an eye out. You never know what might happen.
Outstanding. Appreciate you, sir. Appreciate the audience, and have a great night.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Well, I'm trying to end it.